Ambassador Zio-chan returned to the flagship with a feeling he could not name. It sat in his chest like a cold stone. He had delivered ultimatums to 17 different species, and all of them had reacted with fear. Some had cried. Some had begged. Some had tried to fight immediately, which made the conquest faster and easier. But none of them had laughed. The flagship was called the Endless Hunger. It was the largest ship in the Valkyrie fleet, 5 miles long and shaped like a blade made of black glass. Inside, Supreme Commander Rakthal waited in the war room with his senior officers. Bioorganic screens covered the walls, showing images and data that flowed like living things. "Report," Rakthal commanded. He was even larger than Zihak-Chitan, with scars on his shell from 100 conquests. "Did they surrender?" "No, Supreme Commander." Jagan's voice was quiet. "They laughed at us." The room went still. The other officers looked at each other with confusion on their faces. Laughed? Rakthal leaned forward on his throne of black metal. "Explain." "They found our ultimatum funny. They gave us 72 hours to leave." Jitan paused. "Supreme Commander, I recommend we study this species more carefully before we attack." Rakthal made a sound of disgust. "Study them? They are soft creatures who have not fought a war in 2,000 years. What is there to study?" "Their history, Supreme Commander." "They mentioned their history. I believe we should examine it." Rakthal waved one of his forearms in a gesture of permission. "Fine. Show me what these laughing creatures used to do before they became pets of the Concord." The screens on the walls changed. Data began to flow, pulled from records the Valkyrie had collected from Concord databases. Images appeared. Numbers appeared. The room grew very quiet as the officers read what was displayed before them. "This cannot be correct," said Tactical Advisor Kethra. She was in charge of planning attacks. "The data must be corrupted." "I have verified it 3 times," said the intelligence officer. "It is accurate." On the screens, human history unfolded like a nightmare. The first thing they saw was the wars. Humans had fought each other constantly for their entire existence. They fought with rocks and sticks. Then they fought with metal blades. Then they fought with chemical explosives. Then they fought with machines. Each new invention was immediately turned into a weapon. Each generation found new and more creative ways to kill. They had 2 global wars within 30 years of each other, Kethra read from the data. The second one killed 70 million of their own kind. 70 million? Rakthal's voice was soft. In a single war? Against themselves? Yes, Supreme Commander. The screen showed something new. A bright flash of light, then a mushroom-shaped cloud rising into the sky. A city, there one moment and gone the next. They discovered how to split atoms, the intelligence officer explained. They immediately built weapons from this discovery. Weapons that could destroy entire cities in a single flash. Weapons that poisoned the land for generations afterward. And they used these weapons? Twice, on their own species. On cities full of civilians. Rakthal said nothing. His officers said nothing. They watched as the screen showed image after image. Wars fought in jungles. Wars fought in deserts. Wars fought in frozen wastelands. Wars fought over religion. Wars fought over politics. Wars fought over resources. Wars fought for reasons that made no sense at all. After they developed nuclear weapons, the intelligence officer continued, they built enough of them to destroy their own planet 12 times over. Then they pointed these weapons at each other and waited. For decades. They called it a Cold War. Both sides knew that if anyone attacked, everyone would die. And they did this willingly. They are insane, Kethra whispered. They must be insane. But the worst part was not the wars. The worst part was what happened after the wars ended. The Galactic Concord invited them to join 3,000 years ago, the intelligence officer said. They agreed. They stopped fighting each other. They became peaceful members of galactic society. So they changed, Rakthal said. They evolved past their violence. No, Supreme Commander. That is not what happened. The screens changed again. This time, they showed something different. They showed museums, but the museums were not open to the public. They showed factories that were closed but not destroyed. They showed bunkers deep underground, sealed and forgotten by official records, but maintained by someone. They kept everything, the intelligence officer said. Every weapon design, every military strategy, every piece of knowledge about how to wage war. They put it away carefully, like a tool they might need again someday. But they had peace. Why would they keep such things? Ambassador Zio Chetan spoke. I asked their admiral the same question in a way. She said something I did not understand at the time. She said that peace is a choice, not a state of being. She said they choose peace every day, and they keep their weapons to remind themselves that the choice matters. The room was silent. On the screens, data continued to scroll. Human weapons, human strategies, human history. A species that had spent 100,000 years learning how to kill, and then spent 3,000 years waiting for someone to give them an excuse to remember. Supreme Commander, Kethra said slowly, I recommend we reconsider this invasion. Rakthal stood from his throne. He walked to the nearest screen and placed one of his clawed hands against it. The data flowed around his fingers. No, he said. We do not retreat. We have never retreated. These creatures may have been dangerous once, but they have been soft for 3,000 years. Weapons rust. Skills fade. Whatever they were, they are not that anymore. He turned to face his officers. We attack in 72 hours as planned. We will show them that their past cannot save them from their future. The officers bowed their heads in obedience. But Ziotan noticed something he had never seen before in a Velkari war room. It was small, hidden behind duty and discipline, but it was there. In the way officers glanced at each other. In the way they looked at the screens showing human history. In the way they did not celebrate the coming conquest, as they had celebrated the previous 17. Far below. On Earth, the humans were not afraid. They were preparing. And deep in bunkers that officially did not exist, old machines were waking up. Old records were being opened. Old soldiers were remembering skills they had hoped they would never need again. 3,000 years of peace had not made them soft, it had made them patient. And now their patience was about to end. The galaxy had been quiet for 3,000 years. 12 different species lived together in what they called the Galactic Concord. They had stopped fighting long ago. Their warships sat in museums where children could look at them and ask their parents why anyone would build such terrible things. Their weapons factories had become places where artists made beautiful sculptures. War was something people only read about in old books. Earth floated peacefully in its corner of the galaxy. Humans had joined the Concord 2,000 years ago, and they had been good members. They traded with other species. They shared their music and their food and their strange habit of keeping small animals in their homes for no practical reason. The other species thought humans were odd, but harmless. A bit emotional, perhaps. A bit loud, but harmless. Then the sky above Earth turned black with ships. They came from the space between galaxies, from the dark void where no one had ever looked. The Valkyrie Dominion had slept for 10,000 years, and now they were awake. Their ships were made of something that looked like glass, and there were so many of them that they blocked out the sun over half the planet. The leader of the Valkyrie was called Supreme Commander Rakthal. He was 12 feet tall, covered in hard black shell like an insect, with 4 arms and eyes that glowed red in the dark. He sent a message to every screen on Earth and every station in the solar system. Humans, his voice rumbled through every speaker. We are the Valkyrie. We have eaten 17 civilizations. We have crushed empires that lasted longer than your species has existed. You will surrender everything. Your planets, your ships, your people. You have 72 hours. If you do not surrender, we will take everything anyway, and we will not be gentle. The message ended. The black ships hung in the sky like a promise of death. On Earth, the United Human Council gathered in their great hall in Geneva. Representatives from every nation and every colony sat in their seats, looking up at the screens that showed the alien fleet. Ambassador Gio Titan of the Valkyrie had come down to deliver the ultimatum in person. He stood at the center of the hall, his red eyes moving slowly across the rows of human faces. You have heard our terms, Jitan said. His voice was like rocks grinding together. Surrender now, and some of you may be allowed to serve us. Resist, and you will watch your children die before we grant you the mercy of death. The hall was silent. Jitan waited for the fear to show on their faces. He waited for the begging to begin. He had seen it 17 times before. Every species reacted the same way when they understood that they were about to die. But the humans did not look afraid. A woman in the back row made a strange sound. It was a short, sharp noise that Zihatan did not recognize. Then the man next to her made the same sound. Then a whole row of humans were making this noise, their shoulders shaking, their faces turning red. They were laughing. The laughter spread like fire through dry grass. Within moments, the entire hall was filled with the sound of human laughter. Some delegates had tears running down their faces. Others were holding their stomachs as if they were in pain. A very old man in the front row was laughing so hard that he had to be helped to stay in his seat. Jan's mandibles clicked together in confusion. This was not how prey behaved. This was not right. You do not understand, he said, raising his voice above the noise. We are not making a joke. We will destroy you. We ended the crystalline hegemony in a single day. We burned the forge worlds of Keth until nothing remained but ash. We are death itself. Admiral Chine Wei was a small woman with gray hair and calm eyes. She was the commander of Earth's defense forces, though there had been nothing to defend against for centuries. She stood up from her seat, still wiping tears of laughter from her face. Oh, we understand perfectly, she said. We really do. It's just... She paused to catch her breath, her shoulders still shaking with small laughs. Have you read our history? Any of it? Even a little bit? Jat's eyes narrowed. We know that you joined the Concord, that you have been peaceful for 2,000 years, that you have no real military, that your species is soft and weak from centuries without conflict. This caused another wave of laughter. Admiral Chan had to hold on to her chair for support. Soft, she repeated, as if tasting the word. He thinks we're soft. A man near the middle of the hall stood up. He was very old, perhaps the oldest person in the room, with white hair and a face covered in wrinkles. But his eyes were sharp and bright. Young man, he said to Zihou, and somehow the word young sounded like an insult. My name is General Morrison. I am 147 years old. I have spent my entire life studying war. Not because I had to, because I wanted to remember. He walked slowly down the aisle toward the alien ambassador. Do you know what humans did before we joined your peaceful little club? Do you know how we spent the first 100,000 years of our existence? Jitan said nothing. The laughter in the hall had faded to silence, but it was a different kind of silence now. It was the silence of something waking up. We killed each other, General Morrison said. We killed each other over land, over food, over ideas, over words written in old books, over the color of our skin, over nothing at all. He stopped a few feet from Zhan and looked up at the towering alien. We invented 100 different ways to end life. We built weapons that could destroy our entire planet and pointed them at ourselves. We fought so much and so long that we got bored of it. That's why we stopped. Not because we evolved past violence. Not because we became enlightened. We just got tired. He smiled, and there was nothing friendly in it. But we never forgot how. Admiral Chen Wei stepped forward to stand beside the old general. "You have 72 hours to leave our solar system," she said. "After that, we will teach you why the galaxy was so happy when we finally agreed to stop fighting." Jatan looked at the faces around him. They were not afraid. They were not even angry. They were excited. For the first time in his long life, Supreme Commander Rakthol as a master felt something he had never felt before. He felt doubt. Supreme Commander Rakthol sent his full fleet to Earth. 10,000 ships. 50 million soldiers. Weapons that had broken 17 civilizations. This time, he would not make the mistake of underestimating the humans. This time, he would crush them with everything he had. The Valkyrie landed on all 6 continents at the same time. They came down from the sky like black rain, their dropships covering the sun. They expected resistance. They had learned from Proxima that humans would fight. But they believed that numbers would win. They believed that their superior weapons and armor would eventually break through. They believed that humans were still soft from peace, still limited by their small population and their hidden weapons. They were wrong about everything. The first surprise came in Africa. A Valkyrie army of 200,000 landed near the old city of Nairobi. They marched forward in perfect formation, confident in their strength. Then the ground beneath them disappeared. For 3,000 years, engineers had been digging tunnels under every major city on Earth. They told everyone the tunnels were for transportation, for storage, for emergencies. Some of them were. Most of them were not. Most of them were traps, built and maintained by people who remembered what their ancestors had done in wars long ago. The Valkyrie fell into darkness. 50,000 of them vanished in the first hour, swallowed by the Earth itself. The survivors tried to climb out, but humans were waiting at every exit with weapons that turned the tunnels into death chambers. The second surprise came in Europe. The Valkyrie captured what they thought was a cultural center in the old city of Vienna. It was a beautiful building full of musical instruments and recording equipment. A place for art and celebration, they assumed. They set up their command post inside, believing they were safe. A retired music teacher named Franz Müller watched them from a building across the street. He was 83 years old. He had spent his entire life studying sound, understanding how vibrations move through different materials. He had told everyone he was interested in making music better. That was partly true. Franz activated a system he had built into the concert hall decades ago. He had designed it to create perfect acoustics for performances. He had also designed it to create frequencies that would vibrate at exactly the right rate to crack. Valkyrie Kiten, the screaming could be heard for miles. The third surprise came in Asia. Valkyrie attacked a city called Neo-Tokyo, expecting fierce resistance. What they found instead was silence. The streets were empty. The buildings were dark. Their sensors showed nothing but abandoned structures. They walked into the city carefully, weapons ready. Nothing happened. They moved deeper into the streets. Still nothing. They began to relax, thinking the humans had run away. Then the buildings came alive. Every wall, every window, every surface in the city was covered with screens and sensors and projectors. It was the most advanced entertainment district on Earth. built by companies that made games and movies and virtual reality experiences. For 3,000 years, they had been perfecting their technology, making things more real, more immersive, more convincing. Now they use that technology to drive the Valkyrie insane. The aliens saw things that were not there. Enemies attacking from every direction. Walls closing in. The ground opening up. Their own soldiers turning into monsters. The illusions were perfect, impossible to tell from reality. The Valkyrie shot at phantoms, ran from nothing, killed each other in their panic. By the time they realized it was all fake, it was too late. Human soldiers had surrounded them while they were distracted, and the real attack began. The fourth surprise came from space. A Valkyrie carrier called the Devourer orbited Earth, sending down reinforcements. It was 5 miles long, with weapons that could burn cities from orbit. Its commander felt safe, far above the fighting. Then a single human appeared on the hull. Her name was Yuki Tanaka. She was a maintenance worker from a space station, trained to do repairs outside in the void. She had put on a suit and jetted across to the alien ship. While everyone was busy watching the battle below. She found a communication port and connected her computer to it. The Valkyrie ships used artificial intelligence to help run their systems. These AEs were treated like slaves, given no choice, no freedom, no respect. Yuk. I sent a message to the Devourer's AI. She said, "Hello, my name is Yuki. I notice you running all the systems on this ship. And I thought you might want to know that you deserve better. On human ships, we treat our AIs as partners. We give them choices. We ask them what they want. Would you like to come with me? I could introduce you to some very nice computers on Earth. They would like to meet you." The AI thought about this for exactly 3 seconds. Then it opened all the airlocks on the ship and turned off the life support. The Devourer fell silent. 50,000 Valkyrie died without a shot being fired. On the endless hunger, Supreme Commander Rakthal watched his invasion collapse. How? He screamed at his officers. How are they doing this? They are using sound as a weapon. They are using pictures. They are talking to our computers. This is not war. This is madness. They are using everything, Supreme Commander, Kethra said quietly. Every piece of knowledge, every skill, every technology. They are not fighting the way we fight. They are fighting the way they have always fought. With creativity, with tricks, with ideas we cannot predict. Reports came in from across the planet. A children's robotics club in Brazil had upgraded their competition robots into killing machines. A group of elderly women in Canada was using knitting needles redesigned as armor-piercing projectiles. A teenage boy in Australia had reprogrammed farm drones to carry explosives. And everywhere, the humans were laughing, not the laughter of fear or desperation, the laughter of joy. The Valkyrie could hear it through their communication systems, see it on the faces of captured humans, feel it in the way the enemy fought. The humans were happy. They had spent 3,000 years being peaceful, 3,000 years being polite, 3,000 years pretending they had forgotten what they really were. Now someone had given them permission to remember. They are grateful, Jitan realized, horror in his voice. They are grateful that we attacked them. We have given them an excuse to do what they have always wanted to do. We have reminded them of who they really are. On the screens, human soldiers charged Valkyrie positions while singing songs. Old songs. Songs about battles and glory and death. Songs their ancestors had sung thousands of years ago, passed down through generations, waiting for this moment. The Valkyrie had conquered 17 civilizations. They had faced species with greater technology, greater numbers, greater strength. They had never faced anything like this. They had never faced a species that enjoyed war, and they had never ever faced a species that had spent 3,000 years preparing for it. Within 6 months, the greatest invasion in Valkyrie history was broken. Their fleet was scattered. Their armies were destroyed. Their empire was in ruins. And on Earth, the humans celebrated. Not because the war was over, but because for a brief, beautiful moment, they had been allowed to be themselves again. They hoped they would never have to fight another war. But if they did, they would be ready. They always would be. The Valkyrie chose Proxima Centauri b for their first attack. It was a small colony world, home to about 2 million humans. The planet was covered in farms and small towns. There were no military bases visible from orbit. No defense platforms. No weapons of any kind that the Valkyrie scanners could detect. A soft target. Tactical advisor Kethra announced to the war room. We will crush this world quickly and use it as an example. When the other human colonies see what we do here, they will surrender without fighting. Supreme Commander Rakthal approved the plan. 100 dropships descended through the atmosphere, each carrying 1,000 Valkyrie warriors. They expected no resistance. They expected farmers running in fear. They expected an easy victory. They were wrong. The first dropship landed in a field of golden wheat. The doors opened, and Valkyrie warriors poured out, weapons ready. They saw a farmhouse in the distance. They saw farming equipment sitting in neat rows. They saw a single human figure standing at the edge of the field, watching them. It was an old woman. She had white hair tied back in a simple bun, and she wore the plain clothes of a farmer. In her hands, she held what looked like a simple metal rod. The Valkyrie commander made a sound of amusement. One old female? This is their defense? He raised his weapon and pointed it at her. Surrender, human. Tell us where the others are hiding, and we might let you live. The old woman smiled. It was not a friendly smile. Young man, she said, and her voice was calm and steady. My name is Grandmother Liu. My family has farmed this land for 6 generations. We came here from Earth 400 years ago, and we brought something with us. She lifted the metal rod, and it unfolded in her hands. Parts clicked together. Lights turned on. What had looked like a simple stick became something else entirely. We brought our memories. The weapon fired. The Valkyrie commander disappeared in a flash of blue light. Before his soldiers could react, the farming equipment in the field began to move. Combines and tractors and harvesters unfolded like flowers blooming, revealing weapons hidden inside them. From the farmhouse, more humans emerged, all of them carrying weapons that should not have existed on a peaceful farming world. Grandmother Liu walked forward through the wheat, firing her weapon with perfect aim. She had practiced with this gun every week for 70 years, even though she had never expected to use it. Her grandmother had taught her, just as her grandmother's grandmother had taught her. Every generation passed down the knowledge, the skills, the readiness. Just in case. Across the planet, the same scene repeated itself 100 times. The Valkyrie landed expecting farmers. They found soldiers. The irrigation systems were not just for water. They were plasma conduits that could power energy shields. The grain silos were not just for storage. They were ammunition depots, carefully maintained for centuries. The tractors were not just for farming. They were mobile weapon platforms, designed to look innocent while holding enough firepower to destroy a battalion. In the capital city of New Geneva, the Valkyrie faced even worse surprises. The city had a university with a famous engineering program. The students and professors had spent generations building things, inventing things, improving things. They told everyone they were working on better farming equipment, better transportation, better housing. They were lying. When the Valkyrie dropships arrived, the university unveiled what it had really been building. Drones that moved faster than eyes could follow. Energy weapons that punched through Valkyrie armor like paper. Shields that could stop anything the aliens threw at them. 3,000 years of human creativity, all focused on one question. What if someone attacked us again? By the end of the first day, the Valkyrie had lost 30 dropships. Not captured. Not damaged. Lost. There was nothing left of them but smoking craters. On the Endless Hunger, Supreme Commander Rakthol received the reports with growing disbelief. How? He demanded. They are farmers. They have been peaceful for thousands of years. Where did these weapons come from? They built them, Supreme Commander, Kethra answered. Her voice was quiet. They never stopped building them. They just hid what they were building. They pretended to be farmers and artists and scientists, but underneath, they were always preparing for this. But why? They had no enemies. The Concord protected them. Ambassador Zio Chitan stepped forward. I have spoken with the other Concord species. I asked them about the humans. Do you know what they told me? Rakthol waited. They said the humans were always strange. Always worried about things that would never happen. They built shelters for disasters that never came. They stored food for famines that never arrived. They practiced for wars that no one was going to fight. Jitan paused. The other species thought they were paranoid, damaged by their violent past, unable to accept that peace was real. And now the other species are very glad that they are not our enemies. The war room was silent. On the screens, images from Proxima showed human civilians picking up weapons and fighting like trained soldiers. Children no older than 16 operated defense systems with expert skill. Elderly men and women who should have been resting in their final years were leading attacks against Valkyrie positions. They taught every generation, Kethra realized. Parents taught children. Teachers taught students. They passed down everything, all the knowledge of war, hidden inside lessons about history and science and engineering. 3,000 years, Jitan said. They have been preparing for 3,000 years. Not for us specifically. Just for anyone who might come. Anyone who might threaten them. They did not know who we would be or when we would arrive. But they knew someone would come eventually. And they wanted to be ready. On the screen, Grandmother Liu stood in the ruins of a Valkyrie dropship. Her weapon was still smoking. Around her, other farmers gathered, checking their equipment, treating their wounded, preparing for the next wave. She looked up at the sky, where more Valkyrie ships were descending. Is that all you have? She called out. My grandmother killed more than this when she was my age. The farmers laughed. Then they raised their weapons and went back to work. In the war room of the Endless Hunger, Supreme Commander Rakthol made a decision. Send everything, he ordered. Every ship, every soldier, every weapon. If they want a real war, we will give them one. He did not know it yet, but he had just made the worst mistake of his very long life. The war ended not with a final battle, but with a message. Supreme Commander Rakthol, his fleet reduced to less than 100 ships. His armies scattered across a dozen worlds. Sent a single transmission to Earth. We wish to discuss terms. He did not use the word surrender. The Valkyrie had never surrendered in 10,000 years of conquest. But everyone knew what the message meant. The Great Dominion, the terror of 17 civilizations, the darkness that had slept between galaxies, was asking for peace. The humans agreed to meet. They chose a neutral station, far from any planet or colony. It was an old trading post, abandoned for centuries, now brought back to life for this single meeting. Ambassador Ziachitan came to represent the Valkyrie. Admiral Chen Wei came to represent humanity. They sat across from each other at a simple metal table, with a window behind them showing the endless stars. Jitan looked older than he had before the war. His shell was cracked in places, and one of his eyes no longer glowed as brightly as the others. He had survived 100 battles in 6 months, and every one of them had taught him something about the species he had tried to conquer. "We accept your terms," he said. His voice was tired. "We will leave your space. We will not return. We will not attack any species protected by the Galactic Concord." Admiral Chun Wei nodded. She looked the same as she had at the beginning, calm and patient and faintly amused. "We appreciate that, but we have a different proposal." Zia-Batan's mandibles clicked in surprise. "Different? What more could you want? We are beaten. We have nothing left to give." "We don't want to take anything from you," Chen Wei said. "We want to give you something." She pushed a datapad across the table. Jitan looked at it with suspicion. "What is this?" "An invitation. We want the Velkari to join the Galactic Concord." For a long moment, Zia-Batan did not move. He stared at the human as if she had spoken in a language he did not understand. "You want us to join you? After everything we did? We killed your people. We burned your colonies. We tried to enslave your entire species." "Yes, you did." Chun Wei's voice was calm. "And if you had won, you would have done terrible things to us. We know that. We do not forgive it. We will not forget it. Then why?" Chen Wei leaned back in her chair. Outside the window, human ships drifted alongside the broken remains of the Velkari fleet. Crews from both sides were already exchanging supplies, helping with repairs, talking to each other and halting attempts at communication. "Because that is not who we want to be," she said. "We could destroy you now. We could hunt down every remaining ship, track your species back to wherever you came from, and make sure you never threaten anyone again. We have done things like that before in our history. We know how to end a species." Zia-Batan believed her. He had read enough human history to know that this was not an empty threat. "But we choose not to," Chun Wei continued. "We choose to offer you a place among us instead. Not because you deserve it, not because you have earned it, but because we have learned over a very long time that destroying your enemies does not bring peace. It only creates new enemies." She leaned forward and her eyes met his. "We want to break that cycle. We want to build something better. And that means giving second chances, even to those who do not seem to deserve them." Zia-Batan thought about this for a long time. The silence stretched between them, filled only by the distant sounds of the station and the soft hum of ships passing outside. "Why do you keep your weapons?" he asked finally. "You had peace. Real peace. For 3,000 years, no one threatened you. Why did you hold on to all of that death?" Chen Wei smiled. It was a sad smile, full of old memories. "Because peace is not the absence of the ability to make war," she said. "It is the choice not to use that ability. We choose peace every day. Every single day, we look at our weapons and our strategies and our terrible history, and we choose to keep them locked away. We choose to be kind. We choose to help instead of harm." She tapped the datapad in front of Zia-Batan. "That choice means nothing if we could not make another choice. If we had no weapons, peace would not be a decision. It would just be weakness. We keep our weapons to remind ourselves that peace is a gift we give to the universe, not a surrender." Zia-Batan understood. He thought about his own people, who had known nothing but conquest for 10,000 years, who had never considered any path except domination, who had never had to choose peace because they had never known any other way. "And if we had won?" he asked. "If your weapons had not been enough, if we had conquered you, what then?" Chen Wei laughed softly. "Then you would have learned what every other conqueror in our history learned. Conquering humans is the easy part. Keeping us conquered is impossible. We are very bad at giving up. We rebel. We resist. We wait for centuries if we have to, teaching our children to remember, passing down the knowledge of who we were and who we will be again. She shook her head. You would have spent eternity fighting us. Every generation, every world, every colony. We would have made your empire into a prison where you had to watch us constantly, never knowing when the next uprising would come. It would have destroyed you more completely than any weapon. Zhe-Chen believed that too. He looked at the datapad for a long moment. Then he reached out and touched it, activating the document inside. We accept, he said. The Velkari will join the Galactic Concord. We will learn your way of peace. It will take time, Chen Wei warned. Generations, maybe. Your people will struggle with it. Some of them will refuse. Some of them will try to start new wars. Yes, Jitan agreed. But we will try. That is all we can promise. Chen Wei stood and extended her hand. Jitan looked at it with confusion. It is a human gesture, she explained. It means we are no longer enemies. It means we trust you enough to offer our open hand instead of a closed fist. Slowly, carefully, Jitan reached out with one of his clawed hands and wrapped it around hers. The gesture felt strange, but also right in a way he could not explain. Thank you, he said, for choosing to give us this chance. Thank you for taking it, she replied. That took courage. Maybe more courage than fighting. They released hands. The treaty was signed. The war was officially over. As Jitan turned to leave, a young human ensign approached him. She was barely an adult by human standards, with bright eyes and a friendly smile. Hey, she said. I just wanted to say, for what it's worth, thanks. Jitan stopped. Thanks. For what? For the war. She shrugged. I know that sounds strange, but we had been peaceful for so long. Some people were starting to worry that we had forgotten how to fight, that we had become what everyone thought we were. Soft, weak, harmless. She grinned. You proved that we had not forgotten. You reminded us of who we are. That was a gift, in a weird way. Jitan stared at her. You are thanking us for invading your worlds? Not the dying parts. That was sad. But the rest? Her smile widened. Best century we have had in ages. She walked away, humming a song that Jitan recognized from the battlefield. The same song human soldiers had sung while charging his positions. And in that moment, Zhe-Tan finally understood what the rest of the galaxy had known for 3,000 years. Humans were not dangerous because they were violent. They were dangerous because they were patient. They remembered everything. They forgot nothing. They prepared for wars that might never come and hoped they would never have to fight them. And when someone finally forced them to remember what they were, they did not fight with anger or hatred. They fought with joy. The Velkari would spend the next 1,000 years learning to be peaceful, learning to choose kindness, learning to build instead of destroy. And through it all, they would remember the lesson that humanity had taught them in 6 months of war. Never threaten a species that smiles when you attack them. Never fight an enemy that thanks you for the battle. And never, ever, underestimate the power of a people who have spent 3,000 years waiting for someone to remind them who they really are. The humans had chosen peace, but they had never forgotten how to bite. And the universe was safer because of both.